powered by Reviting, streaming from the Reviting Digital Studio. It's the David Daily. Exploring frontier technology, artificial intelligence, quantum innovation, and the intersection of faith, funding, and the future. Here's your host, David Goki.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the David Daily Show. Today, we have a special segment on funding, faith, and future tech. A special guest in our virtual studio tonight, and we have Collin Plume, who is the CEO of Noble Gold Investments, tuning in from Los Angeles, California, my favorite state because, of course, I was born there. And many of you know Collin as well. You're connected on LinkedIn and YouTube. We're on X and Facebook and Instagram and across all major platforms. So, Collin, welcome to the stage today. Good to have you here. Good morning.
David, thank you so much. Excited to dive into so many topics, fun, and excited to learn that you're from this state that so many people bash constantly in the news. And it's not. It's got its problems, but it's going to be, 68 degrees here. So we have some positives too.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's like, hey, if it's cold in New York, then, it's warm here in sunny California. So if you don't mind just kind of introducing yourself briefly for those who are tuning in for the first time, tell us a little bit about how you got into gold and investments and precious metals and a little bit about your firm as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. My first beginning learning about precious metals was through my grandfather. My grandfather gave me some coins when I was 9 years old. He dumped some silver coins on the table. And I said, what are these coins worth? And I'd look at the face value and it'd say 25 cents. I'd say 25 cents. And he's like, well, there's silver in there. It's actually worth 84 cents. And it was always a little bit more. Now those coins are worth, substantially, probably 10 times that. But it got me thinking about what is money. He taught me that we used to have real money that was actually of value. And if you go back thousands of years, gold and silver, the coinage actually had real value. Today, we're just on a paper fiat system where it's just paper. It's not really worth anything. So that was my first eye-opening experience into precious metals. From there, through my career, I was in the insurance business for many years. I also was involved in helping large investors acquire shopping centers, apartment buildings. I was in commercial real estate where I was around some of the smartest, brightest entrepreneurs, mostly immigrants, mostly people that came to this country with nothing from all over the world and built these amazing businesses and then wanted to acquire real wealth. They just, put it into real estate and tangible investments. And then I fell back into precious metals in a really interesting time at end of 2008, end of 2009, when the world was sort of collapsing, the credit collapse. Real estate became very difficult. So I was looking for a transition job for a while. And then now it's been 2009. So I've been in the business about 17 years. And Noble Gold Investments is a family business. I started my own practice, my own business in 2016. I was actually born pretty much the day my oldest son. So we went out on our own to try and educate people on precious metals. I felt there was a void on education. People didn't understand precious metals. It was one of those things that people didn't really want to talk about. They just thought it was somebody for people living in, the woods that they would collect these coins. So when I started, gold and silver did not look as all shiny and exciting as they do today. But obviously with all the government spending, the geopolitical tensions that we see that are happening every day, and then just overall debt that the U.S. has created and the distaste for our dollar, gold and silver have come to the forefront. And now over the last 10 years, Noble Gold Investments, we've helped investors acquire over $3 billion in gold and silver, physical gold and silver, not stocks or ETFs. And that $3 million has grown in value for our clients to well over $6 billion. So currently we have clients sitting with about $6 billion in gold and silver investments, a little bit of platinum too. But that's what we do day to day. And we help people acquire it physically, ship it to them, or we do it in retirement accounts, IRAs, any old 401ks. We've been doing that for a long time. We became an industry leader about 5 years ago. And we do it in a very specific way, a lot different than most of our competitors. But really everything is to ensure the client has the ultimate customer service experience, that they know that we're going to be around, with the ups and downs of every market. And they know they have somebody they can trust with their hard-earned retirement money.
Wow, what an intro, Collin. I love it. I love the immigrant aspect as well. I had an immigrant mother who immigrated from South Korea, which is how I ended up in Los Angeles. And
Wow.
then on my father's side, deep roots in American German, 7 generations. So yeah, definitely appreciate the hardworking aspect of immigrants. So we're going to jump into our first topic here on funding.
Time to talk about funding.
We're live here on Funding, Faith, and Future with Collin. Collin, I'm excited about this first topic, especially around precious metals. So I'd like to kind of get to hear your perspective on this first topic around alternative investment strategies with precious metals. First of all, for the viewer who's tuning in, we have over 30, 40 people now. What does that actually mean, precious metals alternative investments?
Yeah, so there's different ways you can acquire any type of alternative investment. What makes what we do unique is that you can actually hold it and own it by yourself. There's so few assets, David, today that you actually own. If you strip everything down,
Right.
What do you actually own by yourself? So to kind of go, you can buy, there's ETFs of gold and silver there, where you get a contract. There's leveraged accounts where you can leverage, $1 to buy $40 in potential contracts, which inherently comes with a whole slew of risks, which could be total loss, would be one of the risks that I would be cautious of. And then there's mining stocks. So you can buy the mining companies, which are obviously very interesting. And that's something we could dive into and spend a lot of time on. But what we do is really the physical gold and silver. And why that's important, I believe, is that every aspect of our life today, the institutions are trying to get us away from owning things by ourselves. They want us to own a fraction of everything. The whole economy has been fractionalized. And I think that the wealthiest, the billionaires and the people that have grown, decamillionaires, all of them, they go the opposite way. They actually want to get total ownership, whether it's of real estate or of a business. As much as we can invest in other businesses on the stock market and it is a strategy, there is something to owning something by yourself. So what people do with us, they acquire physical gold and silver and they store it. And to give you an idea of what's happened since COVID, it's become such an important asset for all of our clients because a few things have happened. One, the amount of money you can make in the bank relative to inflation is basically at par. And what I mean is inflation's at 3.3% today. These are the government statistics, 3.2. The money in a bank pays about 3%. So basically you're losing the same amount if you kept the money in the bank. So where do you put it? It used to be bonds. Bonds used to be an option. But now that we've had this economy where inflation is in essence permanent, inflation is permanent. They can't get away from it. It doesn't matter who comes in office. Kevin Warsh is the proposed new Fed chair. He spoke a few days ago talking about interest rates. And obviously President Trump has been really pushing to get the key Fed rate down to 0 or 0.5%. But he clearly said that he can't do that. He doesn't. First of all, he said that President Trump won't dictate what he's doing. Whether that's true or not, we'll find out. But basically, he's saying he can't do that. So all these people that thought rates were coming down, all these people that thought all these things were happening, it doesn't look like he's going to have the mechanisms to do it. Now, if he's able to do quantitative easing or other strategies to get more money out of the supply, maybe. We did it in 2009. And gold and silver went up over 20% per year for the next 3 years. So he could potentially pull those strings, but it doesn't look like rates can get down. So if you're putting the money in the bank, making at par, what are other things that you can do? And so I think that's the thing that people are looking at is they want something that they can acquire that's flexible, that they can sell at any time, but also potentially go up more than that, 3-4%, which is what they're getting in the bank. And so that's why I think gold and silver have become a really popular option. Did I know that silver would go up 120% last year? No, but the demand was high. There was a structural deficit. We've had a structural deficit of silver for the past 6 years. The Silver Institute came out again this year with a report. They said we're still going to have a structural deficit this year. Even with recycling of silver going up, even with mining production sort of growing a little bit, they're still going to have a structural deficiency in silver. And yet the demand hasn't waned because of so many things like what we're using right now, all this technology. They have silver in it. And then the big push in silver, obviously, is AI and the chips and everything surrounding the chips. Silver plays an important role in keeping those chips cool. Data centers, a lot of people aren't aware of this. So even though I believe 95% of the AI that's coming out, the ideas will fail, the data centers will have to continue to grow. They will continue because there is a 5% that will stay, and they need to compute all of those, all the things that you and I day to day are sending in. They're sending it to a data center somewhere. They have to keep that cool to keep that going. Silver is an important part of that. So that function will continue to grow. So it's really interesting when you get into the specifics that silver is a monetary metal, and then obviously a massive demand in industrial, and that demand continues to grow every year. It continues to grow, and they're really not able to find more. There's not new silver mines that are coming up. There's not new copper mines. It's very difficult to find new mines. And even if you found a mine today, David, it could take you 10 to 12 years to get any ounces of anything out of that mine. So that's why a lot of investors are looking at gold and silver as an option in their alternative investment strategy.
Yeah, wow, that was incredibly informative. And I have so many questions like, where do you put $6 billion of bullion gold, right? And also to this point about acquiring gold, I'm in a couple of international group chats, and there's always kind of a couple of people out there who are wanting to actually get physical gold in their possession. So I really like that perspective, having a tangible asset, especially being in technology where a lot of the things that we push are ones and zeros, and with quantum both, right? But there's not that physical, tangible aspect to it. So because you've helped so many clients navigate multiple economic cycles, I'm kind of curious, what are some of those maybe bigger mistakes that people are making when trying to grow wealth versus protect it?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be an old crotchety old man and talk about the mistakes but really those mistakes have a lot to do with going too fast in investing. If you look at the wealthiest investors in the world, like Warren Buffett, they built that over 50 years, focusing on value, buying value stocks, value companies. That was really the growth engine. And I think it's the thing that's happening today is people are they're following the shiny object, which I think a lot of the shiny object that is affecting day-to-day men is this gambling epidemic that we have, this epidemic of Polymarket, Kalshi, all the different sports gambling websites that are out there. It went from like a fun thing to people thinking that they can actually make a living doing those things. So that's, I think, the first thing that people need to be wary of is it starts small, $5, $10 bets. But if you're spending, $500 or $1,000 a month on these bets, and you're, obviously continuously losing at a net negative, just imagine if you could spend that amount of time focused on some kind of investment strategy or a gig. A lot of people say, well, I can't get out of the debt or I can't get out of it. There are gig jobs, Uber, copywriting, editing. I'm sure you can testament to this, David. There's a million gig jobs where you can make anywhere from $20 to $50 an hour with simple skills that business owners don't have time for. everybody listening can create an extra 500, probably to $3,000 or $4,000 a month in gig income to either invest or to get out of debt. That would be my, focus and my strategy for anyone that's looking to do that. It makes the most sense to spend the time doing that. But ultimately, I think what people need to realize is that they look around and they go, okay, buying the American home is out of touch right now. For most people, buying that first home, average Americans can't even afford it. First time home buyer last year was over 50, which basically means it was parents or relatives buying homes for their family members. So unless you're in that boat, how do you acquire an asset over time and let it grow? And I would say that gold and silver are the perfect substitute for someone that's looking to build some wealth because it's attainable. You don't need to show proof of income of $100 or $200 or $300,000 a year. You can actually take extra income, buy gold and silver, start to sock it away, get your investment strategy in place. And then later on, when you're ready and you have gold and silver and you have some money in the stock market, and you have these different assets and you have good credit, you can go back and potentially buy that home. Also, I think the problem today is savers have really been kicked out of the economy. Savers can't really get ahead at the money that it's paying. And I think everything that's happened is that it's deterred anyone from saving. So you do have to actively invest. Now, am I saying if you're, $20 or $30 or $50,000 in credit card debt, should you invest? No, you shouldn't. You should do everything in your power to pay down that $25,000 or $30,000 interest payment that you're paying. But once that's done, you got to get assets. Gold and silver are a great asset. And part of our success, David, is making it simple. If you go to websites, a lot of the companies out there, they'll sell you all these coins. You can buy a Mickey Mouse coin and a Daffy Duck. The bullion banks are buying bars. That's 98% of what we sell is bullion bars. That's what they buy. The other thing to keep in mind too is where you're going to sell it. So we had clients last year that bought silver from us during the pandemic. Silver got to a low of $13 an ounce. They bought a ton from us. Well, when silver broke $120 an ounce, a lot of them sold some or all of their silver back to us to take profit. They were able to do that with us because we buy back every day. We buy back stuff. So you have to have a two-way street with a dealer, which is, when people talk to me about Costco, we sell the same products. We're unbelievable pricing like Costco, but Costco's not going to buy back your silver. Buy from Costco. Now you go to a pawn shop and you who knows what they're going to pay. It could be 20, 30, 40% below the spot price. So I think the keep in mind is you got to find a place to buy and sell, number one. And two is you have to look at it. That was an unbelievable run, right? $13 an ounce to 120. But what's happening today is a lot of those investors that sold in their IRA are buying back when silver hits 70 because now they want to go on that next run. So that's the really smart money is like, okay, we saw that peak at 120, sell. I'm going to wait a little bit in my IRA. I didn't pay any tax. Now it hits 70 again. I'm going to dump back in with some money and I'm going to go on this next ride, which I think the next ride is silver to 300. And I have a lot of proof for that and reasons I believe that. And I actually get into my book, which is Silver in the New Oil. I talk a lot about that. But in essence, that's what a lot of the smart money is doing is doing an investment strategy like that, but also protecting it with the IRA because they got all that massive gain. They didn't have to pay any tax. They kept it and went back into cash. And now they can jump back in and go on another amazing ride. And I've seen some amazing growth with some of our clients that have been able to take advantage of this strategy.
Yeah, I really like that statement that silver is the new oil. It's so interesting. It just reminds me about how having that tangible asset and to be able to make it easy for someone to get started in a gold or a silver IRA, like you mentioned. And even if it's $5 a day, I mean, I saw something the other day that said, hey, let's make investing easy for the consumer investor. Now, this show is primarily for angel investors, venture capital funds, and founder operators who either deploy funds themselves or they're looking to make alternative investments like this. So this is a perfect category, a perfect conversation. So as you start to think about the physical goods versus digital assets, Where do you see that biggest shift happening when people are looking at all these? I mean, of course, we had the crypto craze, right? And then the crypto winter. NFTs and the metaverse had their kind of spotlight for, about 6-7 months there. But what is it in your mind that's like, you know what, David, physical assets over the next 20 years are going to be quite valuable and need to be part of your investment mix inside your long-term portfolio strategy?
Well, I think a big part of investing is, how do you invest into something that you're not going to touch? And I think that's the nice thing about gold and silver. If you bought gold from us today, and I would never recommend storing gold in this environment, but like, let's just say you could put $1 million of gold in this, right? Once it's away, and I recommend putting it in a safe, don't put it here, but just for this analogy, once it's away, right? You have an asset on the books that doesn't have any debt. That's the most important thing that people need to realize when they buy gold and silver is it's an asset that there's no company behind it. There's no risk of any debt happening on that side. There's no risk of default. There's no risk of any of those things happening. So you have to look at that as being a really important thing to think about, is that how few of those things you actually have. Even if you buy a home, you're buying typically a 30-year mortgage. It's a big debt. It's a responsibility. So I think getting gold and silver is really an important part of that. And I think it will help everybody. Also, just, looking at the price and looking, if my theory is correct, if inflation is permanent, then everything that has a limited supply will continue. So we see it with electricity, we see it with food, we see it across the board in everything we need day to day. Healthcare costs, all these things that you have to have will continue to go up. There's no end in sight for any of those things that are happening out there. The only true thing is that the cost of these things will continue to go up. Which of these things can you actually profit from? Well, you can get solar panels on your home to protect the rising cost of electricity. You can get a mortgage that's locked in, so you protect the rent, as opposed to rents going up over time. You lock in your mortgage, so you kind of lock those prices in. So that's two ways to lock things in. Then you look at gold and silver. Gold's sitting at $4,800, $4,900 an ounce. Silver sitting at around $80 an ounce. Where will those things go in the next 5, 10, 15 years? And so I look at upside and I look at downside. And I think that the thing to keep in mind, especially with silver, which I think you and I are sort of aligned on, is that last year, 6 months ago, the US government and China made silver a strategic metal. They came out with a report. This has never happened before in either of the country's history. And they said, silver is important. We need to hoard it. That's what making a strategic metal is. You're hoarding it, you're keeping it. So these are things that these countries have realized are important to solvency. They realized when they had this and continue to have this massive trade war and tariffs. Well, what happens if everybody closes down their borders because they're unhappy with this tariff? Like, what are things that we need to have? So silver became this thing that they're looking at and saying, yeah, we got to have this. So if we have it in our possession, we're not going to sell it. We're going to keep it and hoard it. That is fundamentally very important to me, because as our world shifts, as companies fall in and out of the S&P and the NASDAQ, and there's companies every day that names that we've heard. I mean, if you go back 20 years, most of the companies on the S&P are gone. The NASDAQ has changed. All of these things are changing day to day. How do you protect yourself against the change? How do you protect yourself against what's happening in tech or what's doing that? Well, let's just think fundamentally what people need to survive, right? They're going to continue to use AI to some component. They're going to use these components there. Gold is being held in central banks all over the world. And we know for a fact, the globe, the world countries do not want US dollars. They do not want US debt. They're getting away from US treasuries. The holdings of the globe, most countries in the world, US treasuries used to be 70, 80% of their reserves. Right now we're sitting at 55%. So they've sold their treasuries. They've gotten away from it. They're buying other assets. They're looking at other things to keep up, whether the return's too low or they don't feel comfortable with our dollar. It doesn't matter. They're selling it. So how do we continue to keep this thing going, and how does the world do it? And I think the natural shift in the world is away from fiat money. That's why Bitcoin's done so well. That's why crypto's done so well. It's just absolute distrust in our currency and what central banks can do. And it's a move towards physical metals. Gold has always been money. It's been money for 5,000 years. It's been sitting in the Bible. There's 30 references to gold in the Bible talking about it being money. These are the things that will continue to change, and it won't go away. This is important to realize. This shift, this wealth shift that's happening is not going to go away ever again. We've created a system that we can't get out of. The government can never balance our books. We've had a government shutdown every 90 days for the past 2 to 3 years because we've spent too much money. Where is the end game? And I think the end game is everything moves towards assets that actually have true value. And the dollar and our US treasuries are not assets that will continue to have value over time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Wow, there's so much packed knowledge there. And by the way, since we are live, I do want to welcome all the folks from Noble Gold IRA YouTube channel. And of course, we have folks on my YouTube channel as well, and our LinkedIn marketing channel, and many others. This is really fascinating, fantastic. I'm in alignment with exactly what you're saying. Now, to round out this funding category topic, before we get into faith, Collin, I have one final question for you, which is, if I am an investor, okay, an angel investor, an accredited investor, okay, 400K plus, whatever, or if I'm a venture fund, early stage fund, or maybe Series A, Series B, or maybe I'm even a tech operator with maybe 12 to, or a founding operator with operating a business with maybe 12 to 24 months of runway, cash in the bank, what are some simple steps that I could take to maybe diversify my risk with physical precious metals? How do I do that as, say, an investment fund that's sitting on billions, maybe that cash hasn't been deployed yet, or maybe a startup just got that $1 million check and they don't need all of that today, or maybe an angel has, a lot in stocks, maybe it's in some bonds, maybe less risky assets, if you will, because they're buying and holding. How do these folks diversify their portfolio so that they can continue to see a profit and a return, but also make more investments into the future with precious metals?
Well, all of those investors have one thing in common is, I think the most important thing when you're angel investing or you're a business owner or any of those things is you want the money that you have waiting for opportunities to make a return, but you need to have the capital flexible and ready to go at a moment's notice. Gold and silver present that opportunity, which is completely unique. A lot of those types of investors are probably leveraged in different bonds, or they're doing treasury swaps. You're looking at 3 to 5% in that, money that's just sitting dormant until that great opportunity presents itself. And I'm sure it eventually will, but you want to be patient. And so you want to try to get a different type of return. And we do this with our money too at Noble Gold. We have some of that moving, some cash moving in that way. And then we have the rest of it in precious metals. And if I ever had a big capital expenditure, if I needed something, I can go either way. I think the one thing that you don't want to get into is you want to have all your eggs tied up in one basket, making that sort of minimal return, right? I think most companies want to have an availability to have a better return and balance that return. So getting into gold and silver, which is liquid any day, does present that opportunity to have a better return, coupled with the other things that you're probably doing with your dormant cash. But I think business owners, are a big part of our business. We do a lot of SEP IRAs. So business owners that are self-employed that, have other investments, they'll come in and, the laws have changed, but there used to be able to put up to $52,000 in a SEP IRA. I love that for business owners because they get something that's a little different than some of the other investments out there. And also the level of risk is substantially lower than what they're doing. Owning a business is risky. Angel investment, you're looking at, I think the probability is 1 out of 20 companies is probably you're doing amazing, but most angel investing is probably 1 out of 50 companies. How do you get, some of that where it's balanced a little bit and get a return? So I think having gold and silver liquid company in your treasuries and your other places you're putting your money is a perfect way to do that. So that's something that's really interesting, important. And it's a strategy that we actually deploy at Noble Gold, is that we keep reserves in precious metals for just rainy day if we need it, but we want to get a decent return. So it makes sense for us as a business. So I think to get a better return on your dormant cash or your savings account money for your business is a great way to diversify with precious metals.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. I'm excited to explore partnering together with you after this live show, because I can think of a handful of scenarios that would make sense maybe to bring you in on some interesting gold and precious metal deals. But I want to highlight one comment that you made, which was over 30 references in the Bible about gold, and also the fact that gold has been a currency of transaction for over 5,000 years. And so we're going to actually get right into our faith segment.
Focusing on faith for a moment.
All right, welcome to our Funding, Faith, and Future Tech. Today we're with Collin, and we're talking about all things precious metals. And right now we're going to talk about leadership philosophy and decision-making in investing. So Collin, I'm not sure if you're a man of faith or spirituality, or maybe growing up you had a religious background of some kind, but I'm curious, what started the foundation of faith concepts in your life?
I grew up in a household that had, we celebrated many holidays. My father's Christian, my mother's Jewish. We did a little bit of both. So I had a good foundation of, learning about different religions. I also went to a Catholic high school, which we had world religions. So I got a great understanding of Buddhism and Islam and many of the other religions that are out there. We studied all of them, and I got a good taste of them. I think for me, what transitioned me more to having more faith was having getting married, and then obviously having children. Having children, I think, gives you a different perspective on, this idea that there's more out there in the world. There's better ways to get your messaging out than just what you can do. The fact that I can instill beliefs in my children that they could, potentially do amazing things in the world and grow and have a positive impact. It's something that's really, really important to us. I own actually 5 different companies. I have close to 70 employees across all of those. Since COVID, since owning these companies, one of the things that I've truly focused on is giving faith and confidence and all the tools to everybody that works for us. And when I mean tools, I mean health tools, from mental health to time off to a safe environment and space, because I think that, faith and mental health and just like confidence, me to giving that to them day to day has obviously been great for all of our companies, and we've substantially grown. But also when people, if they ever leave or transition or they continue to work for us, they know that I'm behind them 100%, and I want them to succeed. I want them to be happy, healthy. We have this whole thing about when anybody has a baby that I'm like almost in tears at Noble Gold or Guardian HR or any of the companies I have. I just love seeing people build their families. So I've started with my family, my wife, who's a big part of my partner and everything that we do. And then I've transitioned over to like building a team and an environment and a family environment, which I think is really important. So those are the things that I've tried to do in my life, is instill that confidence and belief, and try to make, if we're working together and spending so much time together, try to make it that it's enjoyable. And we do things like trips, like we have a 10-year anniversary trip of Noble Gold that's coming up this year. All the employees are going to go to Bend, Oregon, and we're going to spend a few days together. So I believe in experiences and faith and trust and health and just being a real advocate for everybody that decides to, work for us, which is a real joy. We want to give that back to them in full force.
Yeah, I love that perspective, this idea of stewardship and integrating your religious upbringing, but also now more your faith practice. And what I'm hearing you say is, as a father, as a husband, as an executive, and there's many other roles or titles that you play, that decision making, that faith value, this core mission of who you are as a human plays a really big role in. And I really appreciate that you share that, not only publicly, but of course, internally with your team and of course with your family. And so building on that, let's get into the decision-making process and how your faith values actually align to your decision-making process in investing.
Yeah. For investment purposes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
This idea that, like, okay, there's so many times when maybe your morals or your values, your ethics are going to be tested in investing, especially in gold, internationally and globally. I mean, just looking at KYC and AML, right? Know your customer and anti-money laundering. Now, I'm not the professional. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial advisor, but I would imagine that there are times when your faith or your values are tested. And so the question here really is, for yourself or others listening who may struggle or may go through a place where that are crossroads, needing to make a decision, what goes into making that good decision, really sticking to your guns, to your roots, even if maybe the short-term benefit or there may be a lure or temptation to do something differently than what your faith values drive you to decide.
So, yeah, I think a consistent theme with me as an owner in any business that I'm involved with is getting people in the leadership down to understand that not all business is good business. And what I mean by that is, if there's a client that is abusing someone at the company or negative or saying things, not appreciating, all of my businesses are customer service based, from Noble Gold to our crypto trading platform. We have a Guardian HR, which is an HR and payroll business. These are all heavy labor business with humans. These aren't AI companies. They're not like app companies. Like, you have to talk to humans. So I'm a firm believer, and I tell all of these people that work for us, if you can't communicate with them in a coherent way, if they're interrupting you, if they're not working, then it's maybe we're not a partner for them. And that's a big part of what we've built at Noble Gold, is that we turn away a lot of business. We turn away a lot of business because of the way that people try to communicate, or sometimes we just tell people, like, this may not be right for you just yet. If you're $100,000 in debt and you want to put $5,000 in a gold and silver, like, that's not a smart move for you. And we're not going to try to encourage that type of investing. We're not financial advisors and anything like that, but we'll be honest with you. I think that's the most important thing, is not all business is good business. Also, you just get dragged away from what your core is. Your core at Noble Gold is we want to work with families that are interested in protecting the wealth for them and their family, and then maybe the next generation of people. That's the kind of mindset. We're mostly, I think our client base is like 85% family people that have this belief in legacy, protection. They do want to have something outside of the government's control or reach. So they like the idea of gold and silver because it's safe and they're in control of it. And we're sort of your stewards to get it. But ultimately, those are the kind of people that we need. With our other business, Guardian HR and payroll, like, we're looking to help small business owners deal with complexity in HR, payroll, all those things. But if we can't communicate, we can't do business. So I think that's the most important thing that I've really focused on, is we're in a customer service business, but if you won't let us do our job, then maybe we shouldn't work together. And I think the reviews for Noble Gold and my other businesses sort of show that if someone's willing to listen, we are experts in many different areas. If you let us help you there, we'll steward you in the right way. We'll get you in the right direction. But if we can't, then we can, and it's okay too. And we're happy to refer you to another place to do business.
Yeah. Wow. Those are such good points, especially around how to say graceful, no, how to say no gracefully, right? And you get
Yes.
this with your kids, right? It's like, once you say yes to that one toy or to that one thing, they'll always remember. They'll always come back
Oh,
and
yeah.
remind you, say, yeah, you said this. I sure did. Thanks for keeping me accountable to kind of that promise. But yeah, when it comes to um saying no, there's a quick story that I wanted to share. I invested a significant amount of time into a fintech media startup, and at the time the acting CEO uh, was in role, and I was the acting chief product officer. And I asked him a really interesting question. I said, hey CEO, what is going to get you to a 9-figure net worth and valuation? And of course, he said, saying no 9 times more effectively and efficiently would help him have clarity and stand by his values. And I thought about that as well myself. And in the context of this conversation, I'm curious, like, how do you stay grounded in your values and gracefully lead someone to a no, or a maybe not today, maybe tomorrow, or like you had mentioned, maybe now is not the right time for you? For those listening who have trouble saying no, which many of us can be people pleasers at times, how do you effectively say no, maybe even to someone that you love and care about, like a wife or a partner or, a stakeholder or an investor, when it might benefit you now, that $5,000 of gold investment, for example. But if they're sitting back, you kind of have that almost fiduciary responsibility to say, look, I'm not a financial expert here, but you might want to consider an alternative route that doesn't mean doing business with us today. How do you navigate situations like that, Colin? I'm really curious to hear your expert advice and wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key for us is we will spend the time with people to give them the right advice, and just kind of lay that out for them. But you're right, it is tricky. I remember a specific situation where I was very early in the business that we had a very aggressive person that wanted to buy gold and silver from us. And there was something wrong. I knew there was something wrong. The salesperson told me, I don't know, but they said they're going to send the money. He's asking a lot of strange questions. Anyway, so I got on the phone, and it turns out that the person was a very smart person. It was an actual doctor. But what happened was the doctor had recently had some kind of brain surgery, and something in the chemistry was wrong. Something was going on. And I basically had to do something that I've never done before, is I had to block the wire from this person because I just did not feel comfortable doing it. And my lawyer, who's still our lawyer, said, technically, it's not at your discretion to do this, and something can happen. And I said, listen, I'm willing to look, if there's a lawsuit that comes, I'm willing to take it on. And just, I feel like it's the right thing to do. And nothing came of it. Maybe he bought from somebody else. I don't know. Hopefully he didn't. He wasn't in the right mental state. But we were very early in the company, not profitable. We probably needed that business, but I knew that I was going to build this thing for the long time. I also knew that there's always a chance. We were about 4 years in business. There was a chance that my kids are going to be involved in this business at some point in the future. And I thought, how would I explain to them that I took money over protecting somebody at a terrible time, and I had that information. So I think there's just times that you have to make that moral choice when you're running a business, and I think it's the right thing to do at the time, and I think it's paid me back a million times over just in goodwill. I think people that work for me, they know that I take the high road and I do things the right way. People that we buy metals from time to time, and we're at the point now that we don't really have to buy that much because we have so much metals coming in. But at the beginning, we were buying from all these different places, and we needed, and people always came to us first because we paid fast and we did what we said. So I think at the end of the day, sometimes you do have to make these tough choices. We have to turn away business. I mean, I've had salespeople say, well, why are we turning this away? And it's like, well, it just doesn't make sense for them. It's not the right move. How are you going to feel? Why don't you go home and pray on it and let's talk about it tomorrow? And that's what I've always done. If I've had a critical point, is I go home, pray on it, I come back tomorrow and make a decision. And I think every business owner should consider that. If you want to be in business for a long time, it's the way to do it. Some people, the startup world, they're just looking to sell it at some point and be gone. But everything that I've started, I'm not looking to sell. I want to keep it. If I'm going to keep it, then I think you have to do things in a moral and proper way. And you have to protect people and you have to protect your employees too.
Yeah, so good. There's so many bits there that I'm just chewing on right now. And it's those experiences, right? You have to ask yourself when you're making a decision in 10 years from now, in 20 years, maybe even more legacy driven. When I'm gone and my grandchildren are here, will they be set up for success? Will they look back on grandpa's decisions and say, oh yeah, I think back then grandpa was thinking about my future? And I don't think many people necessarily think about that, certainly not in a world of technology and AI where it's all about let's go faster, let's be more efficient, let's make fast decisions. Our people need us to get us returns on their venture cap money, so we're going to do whatever it takes to be profitable. But yeah, there definitely is this decision-making process, especially in leadership philosophy and how to make those wise decisions. And to your point, if you're a person of faith, spirituality, or considering that as an option, why not say a quick prayer? And for those of you who are watching and don't believe in prayer or God, or maybe you don't know who God is, maybe just put a thought or an intention out there saying, God, show yourself to me, reveal yourself to me in a unique and personal way. And I could debate theology with you all day, religion. You're a studied man yourself, both practically in your family and also growing up. And I'm part of an organization called AI and Faith, bringing the world's wisdom into tech ethics. And you learn real quick that most faiths and religions have some sort of communication pattern or communication practice with the divine God or set of gods. And so I really like that. If you're thinking about a big decision, why don't you think about praying on it for a second?
Yeah.
And that's a great transition into our third and final segment, which is all about future.
Let's talk about quantum and the future of technology.
All right, future technology here. Thanks for tuning in today. We've got a solid 30 plus people really tuned in, really engaging here in the live. So if you're tuning in, feel free to drop a comment. Let us know where you're tuning in from and what you're thinking so far. And if you have a question, just drop that in the comments. We'd love to ask Collin some of those questions here at the end. Okay, so looking to the future and thinking timeless, like this will live on podcasts forever. What market trends and recent investment activities do you think will continue to be trends in, say, 5 to 10 years from now? Maybe we're in 2036, looking back today and saying, you know what? Back then, Collin had this idea, like this prediction or this thought, like being really bullish on it. What do you feel like are some of those future trends that we should be thinking about over the next medium term, 5, 10 years or so?
This is a hard question, right? I mean, to know
there's no right answer, right? It's kind of like Gary Vee. He makes like 500 predictions, and one out of those 500 is right. And he goes back to that one prediction. It's like, look, see, I said that social media was going to be big.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm just kind of curious what you're
I'll
thinking.
I'll go to my book. I'll go to my book, and there's two big overarching predictions in my book. One, silver will continue to be a necessary metal that we will need. I go through all the industrial uses of silver that are here today, and there'll be more in the future. If silver is only being mined as a byproduct, copper and zinc, and it becomes something that's so necessary, where could the price go? I do think owning some gold and silver will never hurt you. And also in my book, there's another prediction that I talk about, or something that I strategy, is satellite cities. I think in real estate, there's an opportunity in satellite cities. I outline some satellite cities that were on my mind in December of 2024 when I wrote the book. I still think many of those cities are opportunities. And what I mean by satellite cities, they're within 30 miles of any big city, and we're seeing some growth. We're looking at charts. Starbucks does a very similar strategy. Now that they've shut down a lot of stores, where are they starting to open? And they have a whole team looking at this. And I think if they're opening a new Starbucks in a city, then you know that there's a lot of data behind job growth, close enough to airports, big techs moving in. There's a lot of factors happening, good schools, tax basis, all these things. So in my book, I talk about silver and length, and then I have one chapter where I dive into satellite cities. One of them, I'll just tell you, is a city called Greenville, South Carolina, which is really starting to expand and grow. And I actually own two triple net properties there. I own a Habit and a Chipotle. I'm part of a group of about 10 investors that we own these things. They're triple net opportunities. I think that's going to be a great place to own in the future because job growth is high. Housing prices are still relatively affordable. They care about their community. It has and to go into faith, it is a faith-driven community. And I do believe faith-driven communities, they do something special in those communities, from schools to how they take care of it, the growth strategies. There is an element there that I think is really important. There's a lot of factors when I look at these things, but I dive into that in my book. So I think the two things that you can hang your hat on is that silver will be extremely important. You'll need it. You're going to want to own it in your hands. You're not going to want to own mine. And then take a look at my satellite real estate strategy. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, real estate's a longer term play. It's more of a tax advantage play, appreciation on your money. Those are all the things you should think about. Yes, you may make some money today, but you should be I'm looking at 10, 15, 20 years down the road with a lot of those strategies. But I do think those are really important to look at, to have some of those things that maybe make a smaller return now. But in the end, if you could own a property outright in one of these massively growing areas that you can get strong tenants. So I do believe in the physical ownership of both of these things to some extent. So those are the things in the next 5 to 10 years that I think will pay out dividends for people.
I love it. I like the idea of satellite cities. It's the first time you've mentioned, that anyone's mentioned that on the show after over 50 plus episodes here in just 3 months. So that's a beautiful concept. Greenville, South Carolina, almost went to school there. I'm glad I didn't. I went to Indiana and Washington University. Go Huskies. But the satellite city concept is big in the Middle East, in Dubai specifically, and China does a good job of this as well. But in Dubai, right, you had Desert Rose City and Expo City Dubai, and some others like the Silicon Oasis and the Festival City that kind of spawned up in the middle of the desert. You have to ask yourself, in America, in the United States, where there's a need for infrastructure investment, will the United States invest more heavily into existing infrastructure, or will we start to see more of these twin cities, these satellite cities pop up? So I'm very excited to read your book. Check that out, guys. If you haven't checked out his book, Silver is the New Oil. Collin Plume here on the David Daily. And that leads us to our rapid fire segment. You weren't prepared for this because I didn't want to prepare you, but we've got some rapid fire questions. Collin, are you ready?
Hold on. Let me just take a sip.
Okay. 3 to 5 words, no longer than 2 seconds to think about it. So first one, we'll start with an easy round. Gold or Bitcoin?
Gold.
All right. Risk or security?
Security.
Long-term or short-term gains?
Long-term.
One asset everyone should own right now?
Silver.
Biggest financial myth people still believe?
Passive income.
Awesome. Okay, so round 1, you're in flow. That must have been a good sip. All right, round 2 is a little bit more thought-provoking. So biggest and best investment that you ever made?
Starting Noble Gold.
Starting Noble Gold. Nice. Okay, worst investment lesson that you've learned?
Investing in other people's businesses and not having control.
one habit that built your success?
One habit that built my success. Having a consortium of trusted advisors, including my wife, our attorney, and I have 4 people that I go to for every major decision, and that's helped me tremendously.
Personal board of directors is what I'm hearing. I love that. Okay, so final round 3, just a little bit more depth. So if the market crashed tomorrow, what would be your first move?
Same like nothing would change.
Everything would change. You go check on your bullion gold in the warehouse. Got it. What do people understand that others don't?
What was that?
What do wealthy people, because you work with a lot of wealthy funds and individuals and families, what do they understand that most people do not?
Health is wealth. They spend all of their money on really smart people spend a lot of money on their health in every way, or they focus on their health.
Right. I love that. Okay. And then final question, which is, what is some advice you would give to your younger 25-year-old self?
Stop drinking sooner. I got sober about 2.5 years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I think if I would have stopped at that point and dealt with, I've had a number of health issues, both my hips replaced, foot reconstructive surgery. I think if I got more clear earlier, but that's how you learn in your life. You have to go through it.
That's exactly right. All right. Well, that wraps up our rapid fire questions. Collin, you scored a 100% on the test. Good job.
Thank you.
Now we're going to finalize our show with one final segment, my favorite anchor segment, Beyond the Bag. Beyond the bag, beyond the bag, beyond the bag. Bag. All right, Collin, this is a special segment where we just get a sneak peek into kind of your personal life, the way you travel, the way you move through the world. We all carry like either a backpack or a laptop bag or, whatever it is. So we're kind of curious, what do you carry around with you everywhere and why?
I have my headphones here. I take my headphones everywhere. I love listening to podcasts and learning and educating myself that way. And then I'm writing a new book, so I have a notepad, and I'm just trying to get pages down. So I have a notepad that I don't have it right next to me right here, but I have it in the house. So
kinesthetic, the hard assets, man. Anti-tech guy says carry a notebook, which I do the same. And for me, I carry a analog Casio watch. Funny fact about this, I've not replaced the battery on this guy for 20 years.
Wow.
And it still has an accurate time. So, you have to charge your Apple Watch every day, but you don't have to charge a Casio. All right, guys, we're here with Collin, the CEO of Noble Gold. So, Collin, what is the best way for people who've been watching to get connected with you, to get engaged? How do people get connected with you? And who are the ideal type of people you'd really like to connect with this week?
NobleGoldInvestments.com, our website. You can also call us at 877-646-5347. I would say anybody that's got a retirement account or been thinking about precious metals for the first time, we can educate you in a way that nobody else can. Emails, PDFs, videos, plus you get a live person to talk to and ask questions, and it's all free. So I think learning about precious metals is free. Call us if it's something you've been thinking about. If you're an old 401k with an old employer that's not doing anything, or you're worried about having too much money in the stock market, or you just want to diversify, I think it's a great time. So anybody that's in that boat, give us a call. You'll be happy you did. Everyone's trained by me. It's a family business. We want to get to know you. We want to learn from you. We're going to spend time with you. So, and David, I just wanted to say thank you for having me on. You're a real joy. I can tell your energy is true and honest. And I can just feel, I know when people are living a good life and trying to get the good word out. So I appreciate you and learning about you as well.
Well, thank you very much, Collin. I really appreciate that. And you're natural here on this show. So thanks again for joining, and for folks tuning into the David Daily, appreciate you. Please comment, like, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And of course, go connect with Collin. If you thought this conversation had some value or interested, or maybe maybe I should go get some gold, or maybe I should think about how I am generating a legacy for my future, go talk to Collin Plume with Noble Gold. You won't regret it. All right, take care, everyone.